be right on, folks. 8:30. Just getting my links copied. Hi, James. How are you? Hello, fake person. My day was good. I'm a little bummed. I think probably like a lot of people are. My day was good. I'm a little bummed. How you doing, Mason? I know it's not over, James, and modest. Yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll just start briefly about it. Blessings as well, Caroline. And I'll share my thoughts, but I want to stay on point with regards to the readings, which the readings are actually pretty. It's pretty interesting how this all works because they definitely seem extremely appropriate given the nature of how some people might be feeling. I know that maybe I'm maybe I'm in the minority with a few other folks, but maybe I think that there might be something else going on. So I guess it's 8:28. Let me just pull up the readings so that I have them handy, and then I'll just kind of start early. Okay. Hello, everybody. So, obviously, President Trump gave a speech today. It's a little bit of over an hour. I guess the thing that I'm probably most disappointed in, even first of all, I still think he's the greatest president we've ever had in this country's history. That being said, we everybody has a right to disagree about the pace of things. That's the beauty of a true constitutional republic, where one voice we have a voice that's equal to his in the voting booth. And so, even though I still think he's the most competent and best suited to be president, and I do believe he did, in fact, win and wasn't put into office in November for a variety of reasons. I think that the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is very appropriate because we're surrounded by a lot of really bad, evil people across so many cities, so many states, so many courts. We're outnumbered, and we seem like we're outgunned. And sometimes you sit there and you read the story, and and everybody's kind of talking about it. This isn't new, but this is we're living in the end days. The mark of the beast is coming, and they're going to try to round up and kill off hundreds of millions of us, if not billions. And you hear all these stories, and you look at the book and how the book kind of ends. And that makes you think twice, right? But then there's a side of me that's like, oh well, at the end of the day, we have free will. There's a building on fire, and for some reason, even when that building is on fire, and there's some innocent people in it, we have some brave souls that are firefighters or other heroes that run into that building and go and rescue that soul. And sometimes they don't make it out, but that's just the way it works. And they knew what they were doing, and that's the greatest gift of all, is to be willing to sacrifice your life to save another human being. So I don't, definitely don't feel like all hope is lost. But when I sit there and I think about the story of Gomorrah, Sodom and Gomorrah, will you sweep away both the righteous and the wicked? Suppose you find 50 people. You remember this? This is in the story for tonight with Genesis 18. And then the Lord says, no, we'll spare the city. And then Abraham says, well, what if it drops to 45 righteous people? And then it drops to 40. You guys get the point. And then it drops all the way to 10. And the Lord says he will spare the city. And I can't help but think, when I think of that story and I think about where we are as a nation, and I think about this bogus claim that a third party can't be successful, I think that's bogus. And I have a tremendous amount of ideas that I haven't really shared publicly as to how to successfully build a third party. And my attitude to that, when people say it can't be done, is with God's help, anything is possible. We just read about it. Maybe it was yesterday. Yeah, I think it was yesterday. Sarah had a child at 86 years old, and then not just one, but a bunch of children. Oh, 89. Sorry, my wife just corrected me. 89. So and Abraham was 100. so go figure. That could be done, and Abraham's descendants would be as far as, I guess, as many as the number of stars out there. And so with God's help, anything can be done. When I think of this story of Sodom and Gomorrah, I think about the fact that if we truly build a party around principle versus ideals versus if we build a party around ideals versus deals with this concept, and we just take it in reverse, we have a smaller number of righteous people, or people that are trying to live a righteous life, doing the right thing, being honest, not being deceptive, not doing what they say they're going to do because it's the right thing to do, and just operating off of character, operating off of their values and beliefs, not being bashful about discussing what their values and beliefs are, and disagree, and sometimes disagreeing with things. I think if we kind of go from that route, and we don't need to have these grandiose expectations, because grandiose expectations of what should happen, that's pride speaking. I don't have any pride about this. I want to try to do what God wants with regards to helping wake people up and expose what's wrong in this country and what we need to do to change it, based on the teachings and the lessons that already exist, that have worked for thousands of years. We don't need to recreate the playbook. We just need to execute on it. That's the funny thing. It's like, like, Bobby, what are you going to do? It's like everybody knows what to do. It kind of reminds me of the movie The Untouchables. Remember when Sean Connery turns to Elliot Ness's character, Kevin Costner, and says, Elliot Ness, the problem isn't that nobody knows where the booze are and where all these criminals are doing things. It's that nobody wants to go in there. Nobody wants to cross the line. And then sure enough, they break down the door, if you recall, and they do a liquor raid. Anyways, it's a good movie if you haven't seen it. Believe it or not, I think it came out in 89 or 91. It's like 30 something years old. Man, it's just amazing that 30 years has gone by, and it doesn't feel like 30 years has gone by for me. But anyways, I saw that movie, I guess, like right when it came out. But going back to this concept of if we don't operate off of pride and we operate off of principle, and we try to do what's right because it's the right thing to do, and we stick to our ideals, not being overly stubborn with regards to, working with other people. Just because we have ideals, we still need to work with other people, but we can choose how we work with people that might have less than ideals, because those people that are used to brokering deals behind the scenes. Can you imagine if there's 3 parties that were successful, like one, even if it was 5%, and and those two parties can no longer strike a deal because they're kind of locked in, like they always do what everybody else in the party does, then the third party would always have a little bit of sway as to who to deal with. And so this concept that they have to have 20 or 30% is bogus. That's not true. The Revolutionary War in this country was less than probably 3% of the population fought for our freedom, and they fortunately won. Now, it just so happens that we've had less than 1% of the population figure out ways to steal all our freedoms through co-opting our government. And, it's probably even a smaller number than 1%. It might be like, 0.1% or 0.5%. But don't kid yourself. Last year, they, like I talked about it, this country lost 10 million jobs. The average American worker went in debt for an additional $20,000 that we owe via the government. We got $1,200 back per person in stimulus checks. We've had our oil prices go up 20% within a matter of 6 weeks, under this other administration. We've had our currency debased. We have inflation showing up in food and all these other things. And then meanwhile, the top 0.1%, so 1 out of every 1,000 American families, their net worth last year alone went up by more than the net worth of the entire 99.9% of remaining Americans. That's the travesty. Like, I think it's 0.2%. So why am I upset about what, Trump's speech? Because it's like, what the heck, man? You have 80 million plus Americans that are tired of this. And you just want to play ball with the same people that have been scamming us. You don't believe me? Look at Georgia. Look at Arizona. Look at the Republican legislature in Pennsylvania. Look at his Supreme Court justices' picks. That they were part of the Bush family. Going back to the Chad incident with Florida, with that election being stolen. Because I do believe Bush stole it. I did vote for Bush, and I was young and naive and believed in this concept that these people were playing straight and telling the truth, and sure as heck doesn't seem like it. So anyways, the Sodom and Gomorrah, if we take it in reverse and we unite people, even if it's a few people, not any differently than how the early church began in Christianity. It didn't just start out with 1.6 billion people, or whatever the size of the earth, the number of people back then. It started out with a few people holding communion, fighting for the principles they believed in, spreading the word of Christ, and it just snowballed from there. And maybe it'll happen in 5 or 10 years, not necessarily two years. I don't have any delusion that it's going to happen super fast, and but I do think it needs to happen, because what's in place now, there's no reason it should work. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, thinking you're going to get a different result. These people don't have any principles. We have to wake up to that fact. We've been misled time and time again. I don't know what else you want me to say. That somehow when President Trump was in office and he was the president of the United States, in charge of our military, everything, and he couldn't get the GOP to come clean and fix things up. And now, as a private citizen like us, he thinks he's going to turn the GOP around. He's got no deals to offer. He doesn't have any backroom deals to give them anymore. Biden controls those deals now, and he can make those deals with the existing GOP leadership. And then they'll both continue to figure out how to just make sure those wheels on those voting machines work just right. Just like Vegas, just gotta adjust those dials just right. And it's not cool, man. But if you had a viable third party that had a voice and literally protested this entire time for the past 3 months, think about Gandhi in India, what he did, how he changed that whole country through just no violence, just passive protests, and uniting tens of millions of people. And then what Martin Luther King in this country did, that was all passive protesting. He didn't use any violence. We don't need to be, to be successful and use the truth, the word of God to help solve these problems. There is no need for violence. We can win the hearts and minds by deeds and finding people of high caliber to run for these positions. And frankly, who we really need to motivate is the people in this country who have all the money. The vast majority of wealth in this country, it's been like negative growth for people between the ages of 25 and 45, 25 to 50 in this country. A lot of people don't know that, but it's probably the first time in American history that an entire segment of the population, 25 to 50, is much worse off than their parents were at the same ages. And that's something that nobody really talks about. I think it's kind of bubbling up, and you can kind of feel it with regards to the anger out there and part of the whole rise of Trump. Well, the people that have a lot of the money are, the 50 plus people, that previous generation. And in particular, the people probably over the age of 65. They're the ones that have the largest share of winnings, and so to speak, of the economy over time, because they were there for the most prosperous years in this country's history. So the most effective way to really mobilize a third party is you got to win the hearts and minds of the people that are over 65 to return America to the greatness that it was when they were young, before they were to pass. I don't think it's a coincidence that this COVID, the vast majority of the deaths were over 65, because those Americans, people 60, 65 and older, they're the ones that remember America the way it was when it was truly great. And America was truly great when it put God first. I love President Trump. I'm not mocking him, not saying anything negative about it. I think what he did was needed. Make America great again. Americans first. I do believe in the Americans first agenda among different agendas, as we are human beings. But I happen to believe that to truly dig ourselves out of this rut, if you believe that this is a battle of good and evil, then we need to have God first. Look at the playbook of what the greatest book ever written. That's why it's the Bible is the greatest book ever written. It has all the stories, all the lessons, all the things that we should be thinking about and openly discussing. And you take that as your guidepost to reconstruct, re-engineer, break down what we need to do to build this country back from the ground up. And the way it gets built back is we need an army of prayers. we need Americans that are going to pray every day and ask God for wisdom, and ask God for guidance, and ask God for what we need to do to cooperate a little more, and be more kind to each other, and figure out how to mobilize. And I think if we try to live that life, where we try to live a righteous life, and we try to bring people into the fold to benefit and to share in the wisdom of the teachings of Jesus Christ, I think that is how we can, pardon the pun, but Trump the Trump movement, and actually bring a lot of Trump people in, because I do believe the vast majority, super majority, probably 90% of Trump supporters probably do believe that God is most important, but a lot of Trump's policies haven't been focused on how do we rebuild the spiritual base of this country. And we're kind of like trying to build the other part, but then we still haven't corrected what got us into this mess. And what got us into this mess is a spiritual deficiency. We need to address the spiritual deficiency of this nation. What happened? That we didn't speak up. We kept looking the other way. We stopped fighting. We started being meek when evil reared its head. And we need to step up and do all these things. That's the only way we're going to win. And I think that's the way we show God that that our free will is going to help carry the day to fulfill God's will. God's will not be fulfilled if we don't personally, on an individual level, live out God's will. And if you don't know what God's will is for you, then I suggest you get to praying. Meditate, pray, think, ask God for what do you want me to do on behalf of you for giving me this life, being grateful. What do I have to do to contribute all my skills and gifts to make this world truly heaven on earth? And I think if everybody truly starts to do that, opens their heart and communicates with God, I think that we're going to solve this, and I think the movement can take off much faster than people anticipate. And who knows, maybe even Trump will realize one of the few mistakes I've seen him make. I think this is the first mistake I've really seen him make. And I understand the whole argument. Maybe this is part of this operation to hoodwink everybody. It's really appealing. It really is. And I want to believe it's possible because of everything with regard to Manhattan Project, and Normandy invasion. So I understand the appeal. It's an incredible appeal, but I need a backup plan. So that's where I'm at. Okay. I've got 5 kids. I want to believe that there is a potential plan in place to help solve all this. But what if there isn't? And what if we're just wasting time? What if we waste another 2 years? What if this whole thing was an operation that Trump had nothing to do with, a psych op to convince us to just not get involved and do anything? Like, hey, it's being taken care of. We can just go back to what we were doing for the past 30 years. I already was asleep at the wheel for 20 years, not being active in government or, active in citizenship. That's why I say it, active citizenship. I already fell asleep at the wheel. I don't want to fall asleep a second time. So I figure if we do the right thing and we set this up in a righteous manner, look at doing these things and get involved. And there was this other master plan of sorts to bring justice to all these evil people. Then great. We just kind of met together. We did our part. They did their part. Country's much better off. But then at the same time, if there is no plan, we might be the last stand. So think about that. I like that. If there is no plan, we in fact might be the last stand for America and for freedom in the world. So I want you guys to think about that. It's something that we really need to think about. So right now, we went over Sodom and Gomorrah and basically go over Matthew 6. That is why I tell you not to worry about everyday life. You'll have enough food and drink and enough clothes to wear. Isn't life more than food and your body more than clothing? Look at the birds. They don't plant or harvest, for their heavenly Father feeds them. Aren't you more valuable to him than they are? And so, all the material things we need are great. And, we have so much this earth offers us. But at the end of the day, if we get our spiritual take and fill, then all these other things will be met. I really do believe that, because when you're spiritually strong and you do the right things, you operate at a different velocity. You tend to make, as they would say, you're more likely to operate in the zone and deal with other people in a way that's equitable and fair and just. And when people are equitable and fair with each other, amazing things happen. You conduct more business because you trust each other more. And if you trust each other more, you tend to be more creative. Try to be creative with someone that you don't trust. Even just a little bit. You don't trust them 2%, and you're like, I don't know if I trust them. You're not going to want to share your ideas and your views of things. So that's why I'm saying, how do we get to a point where we restore trust in our fellow Americans, fellow human beings? And the way we work to restore trust, once again, is through through prayer and living a righteous life. And it's not going to happen overnight. There's some people that are still going to be weary and doubtful, and that's okay. And then they just may take a little longer to come on board. But, once again, it's kind of like even a waterfall starts with a couple trickles of water, it just has to start there. Look at us as human beings, fertilize sperm and fertilizing an egg, where it just starts out at one cell, and then it just kind of doubles from there. And next thing you know, I don't even know how many trillions of cells we're made up of. But my point is that whole process, it just started. And at the surface, when you look at it, you'd be like, oh, nothing may ever happen. Nothing, I don't see it. And the point is, a human being from start to finish, 9 months, I mean, that's pretty remarkable. So if you can grow a human being from scratch, all these senses, all these unbelievable faculties, and a way to maneuver in the world and operate, our problems aren't that hard to just organize how we, might be more effective, meeting up and talking about what we need to do to vote some bums out of office, and back the right candidate. It just seems like an easier problem. I don't even want to think about how you would engineer the creation of a human being, so anyways, I just want to point that out. When people say it's impossible, I just chuckle. There's people that have figured out how to split the atom, right? And that was not 5 years ago. They figured out how to do that 75 years ago. So human beings are pretty creative, and they're pretty amazing, especially when they work together in groups and cooperate as to what they need to solve. So do not judge others, and you will not be judged. For you will be treated as you treat others. The standard you use in judging is the standard by which you will be judged. And so why worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? It's so easy to cast blame and responsibility for all this stuff. I think is the moral of the story, and the moral of life. We all have to realize that we're all culpable. We could have all been doing a little bit more. I mean, I joke around, but I'm also half serious. If each American spent 1 hour per day on citizenship, just what do we do to make this country better? And I know I've read Milton Friedman's Freedom and Capitalism, right? And he opens the book with, JFK's thing. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And he just completely ridicules and mocks JFK for this statement. And I got to tell you, when I first read that book, I'm like, yeah, you're right. Milton Friedman, you're right. We're not communists. We don't have to do anything for our society. We could just worry about ourselves individually, the real raw capitalism. I was a younger guy back then. So I think there's a lot of hardcore, von Mises capitalists. I was in that von Mises camp where, you can just figure out how to just, get it all done on your own. And then you look at the reality, and it's no, you really can't. If our power goes out, I got a big problem. I got small kids. We have to have things in place. We could be getting zapped from space, which is why we built the Space Force. And they may be trying to literally burn us alive, through a microwave, through radiation types of waves. There's those types of weapons now that have been built, unfortunately, in this world. This isn't science fiction anymore. So yes, we need a military, and we need really bright people figuring out how to defend us from these lunatics and these evil Satanists that are trying to do this stuff to us and kill us and try to figure out how to steal this country because we have 1 billion acres of farmland. You ever think about that? Who has over 1 billion people? We have 1 billion acres of farmland. Who do you think would like all that farmland? So, when I think about that, about how do we mobilize so that we're all aware of what's happening that needs to be done? How do we contribute through time? People that don't have the time but are doing okay financially, how do they contribute and know that it's being spent wisely? And I think a lot of those answers can be solved now because the technology's there, like whether it be blockchain spending, where people can see every dollar coming in and how it's exactly spent. I've been thinking through how to do this from a theoretical perspective and how to build these systems. Um, I don't understand how to pull it off technologically. That's not my skill set. I know how to engineer solutions to problems. I don't know how to necessarily do the software coding and all that jazz. But this is how we need to figure out how to mobilize. We need to utilize technology to mobilize people, that they can have faith that what they're doing is truly making a difference. And I know I'm at a little bit of a you know, kind of at this little struggle myself, because I have all these people on a volunteer, and I'm getting my equipment set up. So I finally got some of the equipment for this voter project that I'm working on. And once that's in place, I can start having people put things, volunteer time, that we can hopefully see some nice tangible results in short order. So it goes back to this, that with regards to Matthew 7, if we ask, okay, we shall receive. If we ask the Lord for help, we will receive it. I got to tell you, the past 3+ months, I've never prayed so much in my life. Like it's off the charts how much I prayed. I know in the month of December, when I was working 18 hours a day or so, 16 to 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, working on all that stuff with going on in all these states, my head used to get so hot. I thought I was going to overheat like a CPU, and I would put ice packs on it. But I asked God for help, and I would quickly work through problems much faster than I ever have in my life. There's absolutely no way I would have been able to do that if it wasn't for God's help. And it wouldn't have happened. I would have shut down. I wouldn't have been able to keep up at that pace. But once again, with God, anything's possible. So this is a great story with Matthew 7. So this is Psalm 8. O Lord, your majestic name fills the earth. Your glory is higher than the heavens. You have taught children and infants to tell of your strength, silencing your enemies and all who oppose you. When I look at the night sky and see the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars you set in place, what are mere mortals that you should think about them, human beings that you should care for them? Yet you made them only a little lower than God and crowned them with glory and honor. You gave them charge of everything you made, putting all things under their authority, the flocks, the herds, the wild animals, the birds in the sky, the fish in the sea, and everything that swims in the ocean currents. O Lord, your majesty fills the earth. And we should never forget that God gave us all this power to create and to make a difference. And each of us is there's not a single other human being that's just like you. You have this infinite knowledge of possibility. I guess this knowledge that we all have has infinite possibilities if we utilize it. And then you think about probabilities when you start to magnify large groups of people as to what's possible. And it just explodes in short order. Once you kind of get past the critical mass, the really big number is about 5,000. But once you kind of get past the 5,000, it just absolutely explodes the possibilities. I think at 5,000, there might be, well over 12.5 million combinations of ways that you can organize those 5,000 people. That's with just 5,000. Just imagine if you have 1 million, it's just the number of possibilities probably jumps into the trillions. And so, I want you guys to think about that, because when you hear about this, the naysayers, I say, who cares? Keep on naysaying. At the end of the day, we all have to do our part. And I go back to this speech, Ronald Reagan, when he got elected in 1980, he gave a speech about this person in, I think it was Tipton. Hold on a second. Martin Treptow. And Martin Treptow speech. Okay. and I don't know all the words. It was the pledge, but I want to read this pledge. And I love this pledge, by the way. I haven't memorized it yet, but I need to memorize it. And at first, I remember reading this, and I thought, you know, there's nobody that thinks like this, this selflessly, right? I remember thinking that when I first heard the speech, and this was years ago. I'm like, was this propaganda, or did this guy really write this thing into his journal? Um, and in 1917, Private Martin Treptow left his job at a barbershop in small hometown of Cherokee, Iowa, to enlist in the Army. On the eve of World War I, Treptow was called into active duty. He found himself fighting in France on the Western Front with the 186th Infantry of the 42nd Division. Treptow was killed on the Western Front trying to deliver a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. On his body was found a diary, and under the flyleaf was this article, or his pledge, my pledge. In it, Treptow had written, "America must win this war. Therefore, I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure, I will fight cheerfully, and do my utmost, as if the whole struggle depended on me and me alone." You sit there and you think about that, right? It's like, this guy was 17 years old. 17 years old. And he turned around and he just kind of put the burden on himself to get shit done, And it's kind of crazy. Anyways, 1 second. So all I can say is that, we we have our work cut out for us. So with that being said, I think that kind of concludes